So whatever it is, family, relationship, work, any part of your life that matters to you, we use info from the Black Belt Mind to help you plan your way forward, and a technique we call NAP to help you clear out the crap from the past. I'm also a TCM practitioner, and I am legally obligated to say that that changes how I see and talk about things. And I am also a voice on the radio. So I am not actually giving you medical advice, regardless of what I say. So let's get people unstuck now. Thank you. I'm very proud of my elevator speech.
I'm
You
telling you,
should be.
it's down to a fine razor's edge.
Thank you. So today, um, we thought we'd follow up on last week's conversation by working on what happens when your body doesn't believe the affirmations. Because so many people come in and they feel so disheartened because A, they've been trying all the things and they don't feel like it's still working, or B, they are trying to affirm something, and this isn't an anti-affirmation session at all. It's certainly something that affirmations can trigger for people, and also any technique can trigger it unless you're getting to what's underneath, which is if you have not taken care to address the threat of whatever caused the old belief to be there, then restating to yourself insistently that you are going to do the thing that your body views and your nervous system views as a danger means that the more you do your affirmation, the more you state that absolutely I am going to fill in the blank, get out there and start dating, I'm going to start that website and offer my services for X, Y, and Z, whatever it is, if your nervous system thinks that's a danger, then not only will you not get the progress you want, but you're going to start wondering why you quote unquote self-sabotage. And I am a big believer that there is no such thing as self-sabotage. There is simply your system doing its best to keep you safe, even and especially if that's keeping you safe from yourself. So that is tonight. And what do you have to say about that, sir?
It's connected to what we talked about last week and is kind of an explanation of the mechanics of why just positive thinking alone doesn't really always get the job done. And not to demonize positive thinking either, but to understand what it actually is and what it isn't too, so that we're not setting ourselves up for failure, basically, and the pursuit of perfection. What we're looking for is a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better progress. That's the true measurement of how well you are learning to become in command of your own focus, and how that's directly related to where your affirmations are going to all of a sudden become positive anchors for you to actually see and feel the changes in your own behavior. That's a powerful thing when you can do that. I mean, you can recognize that you have a desired goal that requires you to change your behavior from the place you're in, and you actually do that. You actually see yourself make different decisions and choose different things because you consciously are deciding to. Nothing will give you more motivation and more confidence that you can continue to grow and make progress than that experience.
So I keep you around, you're smart.
Thought it was my wit.
No, it is my wit.
All right.
So I remember the first time I ran into this with someone, um, it was actually three times in the same day. And that's usually my cue that something is up and something is afoot, is when somebody comes in with it or the thing gets brought to my attention three times in a relatively short period of time. And the first time was a woman who came in and was working on some body image stuff and some metabolism stuff. And she was so frustrated because she'd been doing these affirmations, she taped them to her mirror, and she was finding that not only was she no longer losing weight with all the things that she was doing, but she was starting to gain weight. And she told me the sentence that she was using, and it seemed like a perfectly reasonable sentence to affirm. And then I said, well, why that sentence? Because there was a word in there that was quite particular. And she said, oh, that my grandma always used to use that sentence. I love my grandma. And I said, oh, that's like, you could just hear the love in her voice. And I said, wonderful. What was your grandma like? And she said, oh, when I picture her, and then she looked at me and went, oh, I picture her sitting in a rocking chair on the front porch, and she's this beautiful, wonderful, amazing, loving, warm, round little woman. And so every time she was saying that she was going to be other than that, her nervous system went, no, 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 but she's the most amazing person you knew. Why would you not want to be like her? And then the next person came in, and really great gentleman that I'd worked with for a while. And he said, I really want an affirmation about this. And I don't usually work with affirmations, but I said, yeah, if you want me to help. So I said, sure. How does this sound? Can you repeat after me? Super smart guy. And I rattled off the sentence, and he could not repeat it after me. His brain just glitched halfway through. And when we hit, like, let's say the statement was, I don't have a problem having faith in myself. And he would repeat with certainty after a while, I have a problem having faith in myself. And I went, that was wonderful. You missed the don't. And he said, what? I didn't even hear it. What? So our brain, our nervous system will protect us no matter what. And when that happens, it's not that we are failing. It's not that we just don't, gosh darn, believe in ourselves well enough that we don't think we deserve it. That is the signal to think to yourself, I wonder what's underneath there that my body is afraid of, that it's feeling threatened by. You look serious and pensive.
Just thinking about how discouraging that is for people.
Mm.
It's profoundly discouraging. Um, we work around those kinds of issues a lot with folks, and I'm very present with just how discouraging that can be. Uh, when you're doing your best to actually positively affirm yourself and encourage yourself to move forward in ways that feel more and more in line with who you want to be and feel truly important and meaningful to you, and then you don't see those results, and then you don't get that shift in behavior and that new perspective because you feel like you're failing, that's super discouraging. And I'm very present with how discouraging that is for folks because I think that there's an epidemic of people feeling unencouraged. And it's amazing to me how, in the line of work that we're in and the time we spent there together and individually, how few people have actually been genuinely encouraged in their lives.
Hmm.
And that's where the idea of a positive affirmation can really feel appealing and really powerful and feel really useful because you're kind of doing your best to encourage yourself, which is amazing and awesome. But challenging as all get out when it doesn't work or it doesn't really produce the progress that you're hoping for or create the conditions or give you the results that you're after. So that's part of what draws us to understanding that dynamic more and more because people are already discouraged enough.
Mm-hmm. Would you care to give your Black Belt Mind definition of discourage and encourage? I know you do.
Uh, in terms of,
Defining it.
I'm asking because I know I could go on and on about that.
I
Uh,
because we generally say that it's nice when we're having a conversation to make
mm,
sure we're all having the same conversation.
sure.
So if you want to give a super fast description of either discourage, encourage, or both,
Mm,
then if people are going, are you kidding? I'm always encouraged, and then we define it and they go, huh, maybe I'm not,
yeah,
then we'll just all be on the same page.
right. So courage, as we operate with it in the work that we do, is pretty simply defined as the energy that we use to face and overcome vulnerability. And if we think about the words encourage and discourage, well, when we're encouraging someone, we're supporting them in entering their own courage and entering the place where their energy thrives in a way that helps them face vulnerability and overcome it because of the meaning and the value on the other side of that fear and vulnerability. So we're asking them to enter their courage, to get engaged with their courage, to get close to and in greater and greater contact with their own potential for courage. Conversely, when we discourage someone, we're not supporting them in a way to enter their courage and to get closer to it. We're literally distancing them from their courage, and we're separating them from their courage and the energy that's available there to them to face things that they're afraid of.
And I think where a lot of people go astray with that is they'll say, no, my mother, father, sister, brother, husband, wife, whatever, is always encouraging me. But a lot of times it's either negative encouragement, you don't want to screw that up again, do you? Or it's quote unquote encouraging them to do the thing that feels right to the person speaking, not the person who's trying to make the decision and do the thing.
Mm.
So they're being quote unquote encouraged to not risk things. They're being encouraged to fit in, to not rock the boat, to not make waves. And that's done really lovingly. And we see that all the time where, well, and I mean, we do that to ourselves, all of us really lovingly. Um, we were talking last week about, because we had family on a vacation, and I became much more aware again about how risk averse I've gotten as I see people in the clinic after terrible things have happened after them. I'm so good at being risk averse now. It's bonkers. And I still think, for instance, I don't need to go swimming with sharks. That does not seem like a good place to use my courage. But there are more and more places where I realized I've been talking myself out of doing things that feel right to me because, ooh, I just don't know. What if people don't like it? What if that doesn't help people as much as I want? And it takes us away from walking more fully into who we are. And every time I work with somebody, like this week has been blowing me out of the water. I'll work with someone, it'll get really clear, and I'll say, you know what? I think we're we're working on this. What do you think? And I hear the big long silence and the breath and the okay, let's do it. And it's it's mind-boggling when people do that. Every time I don't even know what to do. It makes me want to cry every time that people do that.
Never gets old.
No.
Well, and when you experience the power of genuinely encouraging someone, you recognize more and more and more that it's actually connected to that person being supported and giving themselves permission to connect to their self-worth. And sometimes the dynamic of positive affirmations, as it's kind of used in the, more consistent and casual sense, sets us up to feel like from the beginning we're not enough. So it
Mm.
becomes conditional, it becomes kind of an if this, then this. If I look at myself in the true light and then I affirm the thing that I want to become, well, then maybe when I get to the thing that I want to become, well, then I'll be enough. Then I'll be worthy of being of encouragement. Then I'll be worthy of support. So it can kind of almost backfire
Mm.
in a sense because it makes the conditions of what we're reaching for actually more important than the process of getting there. And I guess that to
Mm.
me sort of means like we end up sort of having to sort of hold our breath until the evidence of that positive affirmation starts to show itself. And then we'll be able to feel good. But we can't feel good getting to that condition. We can't feel good making that change unless the results are there. What gets overlooked in that dynamic is the celebration of the commitment to give oneself permission to be a little bit better than they are, and that it's something that they're capable of, and it's of value because it has meaning to them intrinsically, not because, oh, well, other people will look at me better if this, other people will think more highly of me if this. And when we remove that restriction, is maybe the word that comes to mind most powerfully for me, we open up a whole different wellspring of joy. And it's so interesting in some of the conversations we've had in the last few months. There's tons of studies that say, well, joy and happiness are two different things, and
Mhm.
that people who are joyous tend to find more things to be happy about, and more things to be happy about much more easily. Where people who are pursuing happiness as the goal, as the external validation of somehow I've got more worth all of a sudden, or somehow I'm worth being encouraged, those people, one, aren't as joyous, and then two, they're routinely not as happy.
Shall I define joy and happiness?
You shall.
Shall I black belt mind define joy and happiness?
Please do.
Tell me if I get it wrong. The black belt mind stuff is Dana stuff, and we exchange information so often, but we also describe things differently. So feel free to have an addendum to my description in case you feel like there's an important point left out.
Outstanding invitation.
Thank you. So happiness is what we tend to think we're looking for, and it is an external process, which means when I get X, have X, feel X, I will be happy. So what a beautiful day, I feel happy. What a fabulous ice cream cone, I feel happy. And then that thing goes away, we no longer have happiness because it is externally dependent. Joy is an internal process that says, regardless of what is going on, I have this sense of I almost want to say rightness, that you can be joyous and sad, you can be joyous and frustrated, you can be joyous and exhausted, but because it is something that is internal that you cannot be disconnected from, the you're dissatisfied with your life. And that sounds like a small word, to be satisfied with your life, but it's a really beautiful thing to do, because it also doesn't mean, oh, I'm so satisfied with my life that I'm never going to change anything. It just means that I'm going to step towards the next thing that feels and is best, regardless of whether it's easy or whether it's hard, because it feels like it will continue to support this joy. How's that for
That's
definition?
fantastic.
Thank you. So one of the places this tends to show up is people who are always chasing the next thing, the next thing. Um, and that's where people can get looped in. I'm in a wonderful relationship. Oh, it crashed. I made wonderful food. It tastes amazing. Oh, now I'm too full. I'm gonna do this fabulous thing, whether that fabulous thing is going back to school or getting a new job, or it tends to mean changing your external circumstances without paying attention to what that means to you internally. And I'm a big fan of like doing things that are fun. And I did spend a bunch of time yesterday because I realized I'm not done yet, but I realized I could take some of the boring out of my life because I do not like boring. And the bookwork that I have to do every stinking month, um, the bookwork that I am privileged to do every month because
That you get to do.
that I
Yay.
get to do with joy,
We're talking about accounting here, just to be really clear for everyone. Sorting receipts and such,
which is, I mean, it's
entering
just,
them into spreadsheets and such.
and I realized I do get a kick out of um, programming things. So I just realized I could program a spreadsheet. So all I have to do is copy paste, push a button, and it's going to label everything for me. It can change the width of the things. Like I can take at least an hour and a half of work and make it into 2 minutes and feel super duper clever when I do it. So I'm not against changing external circumstances, But part of the thing that spurred me on towards that is because my internal circumstance said, oh yeah, I want to do more of the things that feel like I'm making an impact in the world in a way that I'm supposed to, in the way that I'm here to do. And I don't feel like typing Chevron gas is part of where I am making that impact.
Wow, that's not exciting.
You can do it if you want. It'll be exciting for you.
I type much slower than
That's true, you
you. It would take 20 times as long.
Also, you would simply walk the computer over to the door, put it in the hallway, and then close it.
Probably.
So, what do you think, sir?
Well, it's landing in a place.
Being formal tonight.
You are being very formal. You're always polite, but very formal.
It's the martial arts edness of it all.
It must be. Really, this take around
Also, because I've been calling you yo all day, and that feels a little less.
a little less formal. When we're kind of putting this in the context of like, what happens when your body doesn't believe the affirmation, or what happens when, you've experienced the first time that you don't see the results of the affirmation, maybe is a way to say it. It gets us back into the land of should.
Mm.
And then we're forcing ourselves to do things, say things, and live up to things that we aren't actually feeling the value of in the present moment as we speak them. And that's a really tricky place to get caught, because it opens the door to should, which is conditional, and opens the door to shame, which is profoundly discouraging.
Mm.
And unfortunately, we're taught to use shame as a motivator a lot in society, just in general. I think in sort of in specific ways, depending on our community and our culture and family background. But everybody has a version of where they're motivated by the fear of being shamed for something. Okay? That's probably the most negative motivation we can operate from, but yet can slip its power into what are supposed to be positive affirmations. And that's tough. That's really tough. That's really discouraging and profoundly inefficient in a lot of ways, if we can be really just sort of objective about it. Because then we're having to operate on denial. And we get into a place where we're forcing ourselves to think in ways and act in ways that don't actually feel good in our bodies. And because we're taught to kind of diminish the value of our emotional information, it's a really, really easy way to get disconnected from yourself and your self-worth, and to then feel just kind of lost in a place where the only reliable metric you've got as to whether or not you're making progress becomes rooted in other people's opinions and perspectives. So no wonder it's discouraging.
But we are taught, most of us, that if you are not taking other people's opinions and perspectives into account more than our own, that we are failing.
Yeah, and that sort of creates another beast on the other end of the spectrum, which is that we get ourselves so forceful in our thinking about how we're doing, what progress we're making, that we can't take input from anybody else. We can't get other opinion from outside of ourselves, which is just the other side of the very discouraging coin. Because as we overvalue our own perspective and opinion by eliminating the perspectives and opinions of others, we get stuck, but just in a different way. And our world kind of shrinks. Whereas we cannot participate out in the world as openly, as freely, as vulnerably, because even the slightest thing that gets offered to us that doesn't agree with what we think we're doing that's positive becomes very, very dangerous and something that we want to avoid.
Well, I think we can probably take that back to if your body doesn't believe the affirmations, if you're not getting to where you want to get with the affirmations, then part of what that comes back to is you have not been listening to yourself enough, because we are pack animals as humans. We all have to listen to other people and what makes them happy and what doesn't work for them, and that is a gesture of kindness and respect and love to make sure that we take other people into account. But so many of us have been taught to take them into account over us, and so we can do that because we've been conditioned to do it, but your body and your nervous system doesn't particularly care. So it will keep us safe above all else. So if I was talking to a client the other day who had an uncle, quote unquote, who used to come over and was just creepy. That's how they described them, was creepy. And the grandfather would always say, "Go hug your uncle, Zippadoo." And it's a
Good old Uncle Zippity,
it's an uncommon name these days, but it used to be in the 1800s
right?
really
It's like
popular.
John.
And this person started to get like ongoing childhood sicknesses where they missed most of their weekends because this person would come over for like Saturday night dinner. So the body was saying, "Oh, you're not listening to the fact that for whatever reason you can't prove it, but this person does not feel like a good, safe person. You're listening to your grandfather instead. I'm going to give you a reason to not have to go and hug Uncle Zippadoo." And so if you're in bed all day and you've been down with a cold, or if you've got terrible allergies, or if you're just exhausted and so you have to stay away, then you're safe. Our bodies and minds keeping us safe will always win out over anything else. And so when people are doing affirmations and they're getting more tired or they're getting opposite results, you're not screwing it up. It's just an indicator to say take a moment and ask what's going on underneath that. Or you can do nap.
You can definitely do now.
Um, I think it's you. I think you next.
Well, in the practical application of like what's getting more and more called like mindset tools, right? These days. Um, I think one of the places where we run into difficulty is the what we think should be true and then what actually is true.
Mm,
What we're taught is true is that thinking our way through things with a rational process is the most effective way to accomplish any goal. And that sort of relies on the idea that what human beings do is exactly in line with what they think. Yet in all kinds of examples, both positive and negative, we can see that people will often defy their own thinking to do what they feel, and maybe not necessarily even be that conscious that's what's going on in the moment. But to negative effect, we can see that people oftentimes will think that they should exercise 3 times a week or think that they should eat a certain way. And yet, unless they are forcing themselves and at times actually almost shaming themselves into that behavior, they're not doing it in the way that they think. What they end up doing is eating in the way that they feel. What they end up doing is resting when they feel like their body's tired, as opposed to forcing themselves to go and work out and then beat themselves up for not getting to the gym and not going for that walk and not reaching for the, you know, low carb protein pasta and the steamed vegetables, but for the pizza pops and the, delicious donut that they got offered at the meeting at work. None of those things are inherently bad, but what a lot of mindset tools seem to offer in that manner of discipline being punishment
Mm.
and shame being the thing to avoid, we're not really learning what to shoot for. We're learning what to stay away from. And the idea of staying away from truly listening to ourselves gets easier and easier and easier. And when we don't listen to ourselves, we don't understand our own why. We don't understand our own motivation very well. And so, without a deep understanding of our own why and a deep understanding of our own motivation, we get really reliant upon external cues and external validation. And then we really can easily lose sight of what we're doing and the importance and the meaning of what we're doing. Because if we stop getting the feedback from people that we're pursuing, or we get feedback that's negative, it becomes really, really tough to stay on course and stay on track and change any behavior to accomplish any goal. And it perpetuates the idea that, well, happiness is somewhere over the rainbow, but you got to get somewhere first before you have permission and are allowed to feel happy and satisfied with yourself. Whereas if we can do what we are doing because we're really clear what it means to us and us first, well, then we can start enjoying the whole endeavor before the result actually manifests itself, before it shows itself. We can actually feel encouraged, to use that language again,
Mm.
to be brave enough and to value ourselves enough to take a step towards what it is that we want to accomplish. Right. So instead of beating ourselves up for having gone to the gym 3 times this week and having not lifted the weight or having not lost the weight or having not run as long on the treadmill and putting in as many steps as we were supposed to, and only reserving our happiness to when those things are accomplished, we can start to feel pretty good about the fact that, you know what? Yeah, I didn't lift that weight this week. I didn't lose that weight this week, but I went to the gym. I got there twice. I tried to go 3 times, but I worked out twice and I gave it my all. That's something we can enjoy in the moment and gives us the confidence to stay connected to our why so that we start looking down the road and thinking, you know what, if I stay with that and I aim to get to the gym 3 times a week, and I know probably I'm only going to get there twice. Well, at the end of a month, I've gotten 8 workouts in. Where if I shame myself and beat myself up about not making the 3, I'm going to be less motivated to go, and I might only work out twice in that whole month, and then feel even worse about the 2 times I did, and feel terrible and more fixated on the other 6 times that I missed.
Well, and again, that comes back to we're taught to not listen to ourselves. And it's a very North American thing. Believe the experts over yourself. And the when you become a fellow at a lot of British universities, then you're supposed to go and study the thing that lights you up. And they're aware that they're rolling the dice, that it might be something that ends up being amazing and it might end up being quote unquote nothing. But when people are following the thing that they're excited about, the thing that when they listen to themselves, they say, it says this is the thing, the work that comes out of that is astonishing. That's where I love Rupert Sheldrake's work, and he's written some stuff on the sense of being stared at, how we can tell when we're being watched. He does really cool experiments that when he's running one and you're on his mailing list, he'll say, "Do you want to be part of this experiment?" He talks about dogs who know when their owners are coming home. So, and he's like the guy behind morphic fields and how in a shared field of information, um, like every bird in the world, he says, has a shared field of information, and a subset of the birds who live in Vancouver and a subset of the birds who have ever flown over our car, things like that. And it's really amazing work. It's super not normal. If he was doing what he was supposed to do, please hear the air quotes, he would never have gone near that because it's too weird. It's too out there. In North America, it's publish or perish at universities. So you do something that's sort of normal enough, that's expected, so that everybody else is happy. Don't listen to yourself. And when it comes back to a personal level, I was working with somebody a couple weeks ago when we come back to this idea of affirmations, and she was just going, "Oh, I'm failing." And I said, "Why are you failing?" And she said, "Oh, I keep trying to be healthier, and I know I'm not drinking enough water. So I'm trying to drink water, so I kept forcing myself, and I'm drinking like 8 cups of water a day." I said, "How do you feel? That's amazing. How do you feel?" And she goes, "Terrible. I feel terrible. I hear it slosh when I walk. I feel it slosh. I don't feel well." And I said, "Well, yeah, in Chinese medicine, you've got spleen deficiency. Your body can't process the water right now. You need to have something in the water to give your digestion enough energy to do so." And she went, "Oh, ha ha, joke, joke. Is that why I really like coffee?" And I said, "Actually, yeah, because coffee is giving your system enough something in it, and we could go into the science, but it doesn't matter, to allow you to actually digest food." So she was doing what the experts told her she should do and chugging all this water and feeling worse and worse because she wasn't listening to herself. And I think that's that's one of the worst things we've done, I think, to people in North America is to teach people not to listen to yourself and want what everybody else wants. And that's why we've become, as we jokingly said before, the island of misfit toys, because people come to us and finally reveal their shameful secret that they're like X, Y, and Z. And most of the time we go, hooray.
Yeah, no, I'm really caught in the thought about that because it's kind of fundamentally down to the idea of if you gotta force yourself to do something,
Mm,
you're ultimately going to fail at it. And I think there's a part of us, particularly in the Western world, that feels like that's true. Like the idea that if you have to force yourself to do it, that, eventually it's going to collapse. You're not going to be able to keep it up for very long. You can keep it up for a while, right? And because we kind of have an inner knowing that teaches us, or sorry, that tells us that that's actually the truth as compared to what we're taught, it's a very, very, very precarious and scary place to try to operate in because I guess ultimately the risk of being shamed in some form or another is really high
mm,
because either you're going to do the thing that you feel like you have to force yourself to do, and then eventually you're not going to be able to do that thing because forcing it makes you exhausted and takes a lot of energy to hold up and isn't sustainable, and then you're going to fail and get shamed there anyway, or you try to listen to yourself and not force yourself to do the things you think you should do because other people told you that that's what you should do. And then you're going to get immediately shamed for that. So the margin of error is really, really small. And
mm,
it's really, 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 really difficult to navigate because all you're doing is satisfying the people around you
mm-hmm,
and leaving yourself out because either you go along with that mentality and thinking only the results count, only bottom lines mean anything, only accomplishment and achievement are the hallmarks of actually being valuable or worthwhile as a person. And it's interesting, even as I'm listening to myself say that out loud, I'm like, I don't really believe that, really, do I? And yet, with as much work as we've done on ourselves individually and together, and then with people, I'm like, oh, yeah, actually, I kind of do believe that and did believe that very powerfully. The difference is now, I think, is that I'm more mindful of where that belief leaves me feeling bad about myself.
mm,
And I'm catching that more quickly. And I'm feeling the relief of catching that more quickly. I'm realizing that the value of catching that quickly is keeping me more honest with myself and more truthful about what's important to me and what isn't, and what's valuable to me and why. And it gives me a lot more space to make choices around where I put my energy and what I give my attention to. And that's not for the faint of heart, really. That's not an easy thing. I think that's why courage is always a part of this kind of conversation because, man, it takes some courage to stand out from the crowd and to stand out from the pack, even if you're just doing it not to prove a point to anyone or to, be rebellious or buck against authority. It's not even necessarily about any of that. It's just about saying, well, yeah, that doesn't feel meaningful to me.
Yeah, this isn't about opinion fighting opinion. That's
Hmm.
ego. And we all have different opinions. And respectfully to myself, I don't really care what I think a lot anymore. I mean, I still get caught in it sometimes, but it's more about what you're saying, the meaning of it.
Yeah, and part of that is, we could stop at the sentence of, "Oh, I don't really care what I think anymore," and be facetious about it even. But what that also creates room for, if we open the other eye and look at the whole space around it, is yeah, instead of being so overly critical about what I think and putting the weight of my decisions solely on the rational side of my brain that governs thinking,
Mm,
I'm going to switch or at least give as much room to how I feel about something.
mm. Hamlet, right? Nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so.
Hmm.
And that concept being when we are thinking and we are following what we should be thinking, what someone else told us to think, and we are ignoring what we feel, that voice inside of us, and it doesn't even have to be a voice, it's that physiological feeling where we're saying something or we're doing something and we can feel ourselves cringing inside or withdrawing inside. And again, take it back to the affirmations. When we're saying out loud, I am going to have the cleanest house in the world. And the body goes, ooh, that's not a good idea. Then the the not good or bad again becomes another opportunity to go, oh, where am I not listening to myself? Because I had somebody again come in ages ago, and they said they were always so ridiculously proud of themselves because other people had cluttered houses and they didn't. They were minimalist to the point of being like they bought their groceries every day. They like there was nothing in their fridge. They were super proud of that. And the thinking said that's the right thing to do because the way they were raised, that was the best thing to do. And then they moved someplace where there was no grocery store nearby, and suddenly I think they got snowed in and they went, "Oh, I might starve." I've got to change this. So the ego was getting in the way of what felt good, what felt right, what was necessary when circumstances changed.
Well, and that kind of brings to mind the idea of what we prioritize and why, right? Oftentimes we're taught to prioritize hard work
Mm,
for its own sake, right? And if you're not working hard enough, you're hardly working. The idea that it's only effort and result that bring our value into any kind of acceptable expression or space.
yeah.
Right? That if we're working hard, well, working hard is not going to be fun and it might be painful, right? Which sometimes it is and can be, and there's no efficacy in denying that truth. But sometimes working hard can be really joyous and can feel fantastic
Hmm.
because it's driven by a meaningful purpose that no one has to explain to you. You know it inside yourself. You understand it. You feel it. It's moving with you as you work hard. All of a sudden, that hard work isn't easy as defined by being hard work, but it's full of ease all of a sudden.
Hmm.
Even if it's difficult or hard or painful at times because you're really extending yourself, you're really expending your energy, right? That can still feel super joyous because if it's attached to meaning and there's deep value in it because of that meaning, all of a sudden that hard thing starts to become full of ease which is different than it being easy. Oftentimes, and I think we have an intrinsic knowing of this, but then also it gets a bit distorted. And what I'm talking about is that we know that there's a value in commitment. I think human beings get that. We kind of intrinsically, intuitively know that, wow, if I commit to something, I have a lot more potential and power to actually impact that thing and to express my desire for that thing to flourish in a way that's undeniable. Right? Like I can produce a result that shows my commitment to this thing. I made it happen somehow. I've produced it somehow. I've accomplished it somehow. Those are all wonderful, wonderful, wonderful things. But when they get detached from their meaning and get overly fixated on how we think it's going to make other people think of us, then that hard work, that commitment feels unsatisfying in the accomplishment. It starts to feel like I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to arrive at the place where I know without someone telling me what the value is, that the thing that I committed to and produced and expressed has deep value just because of the way it feels to me when I finished whatever it was I was trying to accomplish. And we both have encountered some, on paper, extraordinarily successful people,
Mm.
really, really, really accomplished people. And sometimes, unfortunately, those folks are in a deeper malaise than other people who are struggling about accomplishment and achievement. And they have created all these impactful results in the world, and yet they're not encouraged by their accomplishment. In fact, in some ways, they're even more discouraged because they feel like, wow, I did all those things, I made all these things happen, and none of them are deeply, deeply meaningful and satisfying to me. So I must have missed the mark. Like those accomplishments become evidence of their disconnection, as opposed to powerful reminders that are very real of how deeply satisfying it feels to be connected to your meaning, because then that makes anything that you do and makes almost everything that you produce feel purposeful.
Mm. Ages ago, years ago, I worked with a young woman who um, did what she was supposed to do. And where she was from, at a very specific place in the States, what you were supposed to do was become the second or third or fifth wife of someone. So she married a 60-year-old man at 14, and she did what she was supposed to do. She kept house and she um, gardened and she kept her head down and she didn't talk about things and she didn't read and study things. And it held no meaning to her. And the challenge for her was, in order to do what she found meaningful, she had to not only leave that marriage, but her entire community. So she lost her family in following what had meaning to her. And when I met her and she started telling me that story, I was a bit I was a bit surprised to hear the story, because you don't meet a lot of people who are married at 15 as the fifth wife of a 60-year-old, whatever it was, but also because she was so full of joy. She was just so full of joy because she um she was pursuing a career. She was studying music, and the meaning in that, she could talk to you for hours about that. She was finally doing something meaningful, even though it cost her her entire community. And it meant that happiness was easy because that meaning and that joy was there.
That's super profound and really powerful because
Because I need to stop complaining about things, because compared to that, my life is a cakewalk.
both of us compared to that. Come on. But it shows the value in even the things that bring us disappointment, that shut us down, that make us feel like we've quote unquote wasted our time
Mm,
or put our energy into the wrong things. And to find the value in that kind of a condition doesn't mean we pretend that we didn't go through those hard things or we didn't go through those things that we now, from our new vantage point, know better than to have chosen or better than to choose again. But it's the contrast of things like that that bring us value.
mm,
That deep appreciation and gratitude that she's expressing now, this person that you're talking about,
mm.
can be clearly experienced and seen. She knows what it feels like to feel purposeful and full of meaning because she spent a lot of time without those things.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess the overriding,
Well, and with enforced meaning.
oh, absolutely, yes, meaning that was external,
Yeah.
right? Well, this is meaningful to you because of what I think about it,
Yeah.
not because of how it feels to you.
You should be grateful because he's such a rich guy.
Absolutely. And you've got four other wives to help you with
Yeah.
chores. Not that, hey, each their own. But in that scenario,
I wouldn't mind a
it,
chore helping. Anyway.
I
Yeah.
thought that was one, the pool boy. Um, but like it just kind of goes to show you that, like, if you're willing to learn from your experiences and to be honest with yourself about what you've learned, you can always find value in anything that you've gone through. And that's not to say that, hey, there aren't some things that we wish we never had to go through, and that we wouldn't have chosen to have gone through if we, had the full capacity for choice in that moment. But it sure is nice to know that those things don't have to be the final definition of you, and they don't
Mhm.
have to be the total sum of your experience. That you can utilize those things because contrast, knowing what you don't want and knowing what you wish you hadn't chosen, can bring you great clarity and value in understanding what you do want and empower you to make those choices with more and more courage all the time. Because then you're not afraid of loss.
Yeah. You don't have to enjoy it, but you're not afraid of it.
Yeah. And that's something that we as human beings, will experience in some ways, probably more than anything else we experience. It's loss. Loss of time, loss of opportunity, loss of loved ones, loss of inspiration, like all of those things that I think can be really daunting and discouraging in life can also be, to quote Hamlet, if we, choose what we see and more importantly, how we see it, can also be the things that give us the contrast that make life really rich. Because when you've had something and then you lost something and then you get that thing back, you're pretty grateful for it
Hmm.
and you appreciate it even more in the future. At least you set yourself up to.
And on that note, I think we're out of time.
Holy cow, how does that
Oh my
happen?
God.
That's
I didn't.
bizarre.
Yeah, that is bizarre. I wasn't
And
watching. You could
I
have gone
know
for
I
another
can't.
hour. I wouldn't have noticed.
No kidding. I just like what?
All
I was
right.
thinking,
Well, broken down brilliantly as always. I'm so glad you mentioned Rupert Sheldrake. I talked to him about 20 years ago, and
oh,
Oh,
amazing.
I know, and I haven't
Still, we're a little
interviewed him
excited
since.
about that.
But it's good to hear he's still out there doing it. So I should track him down.
Yeah.
Um,
oh.
Jeez, I want to listen to that conversation.
I'll come to the studio and just sit there and grin.
Yeah,
Heavy breathing in the background. It's like, he's
Yeah.
exactly.
got nothing,
Right.
don't worry. Anyway, let's
Panting and
get
anticipating.
sort of summarization and wrap up for today and some shameless self promotion while we got time.
Absolutely.
So wrap up, listen to yourself, find your meaning, live in your courage because that is where you will find joy. And shameless self-promotion is, I think still the same thing because I'm still excited about them, is head over to thedigitaldojo.net and we have 3 sets of 3 audios for free that you can listen to. And you can also vote on what we build out into a full 3-week set. There is a 3-week set that you can purchase on Unweighting, which is looking at inherited patterns and also your lifetime patterns. And we're getting some fabulous feedback on them. And when you vote, you can vote on what we do 3 free nights on next. and or what we build out next. And we're just about ready to do the next bit of recording.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd love your opinion because it really helps us out a lot to know what people want.
Yeah, hearing from everybody about what they think would be most useful is always really fantastic. And at thedigitaldojo.net, you can find a whole bunch of offerings.
Oh, we're on Pinterest. I'm so proud of myself.
Yes,
We're on Pinterest.
outstanding. I was just going into the socials. So now, in terms of the socials that we are on, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube now, and Pinterest, which is a pretty great little community that both of us are really excited to enter into and start interacting with people on.
Voted the most positive social media on the internet.
There you go. And positive is affirming. How you like that
But I'm
one?
bummed.
Because we want things that are positively affirming. We want to know how to receive them and how to recognize them and how to work with them. And we've got all kinds of offerings that you can tap into at thedigitaldojo.net right away. If you want to find out any more about the things we talked about tonight or anything we've talked about in the past, please come and join us there and peruse at your leisure. We also want to remind all of our News for the Soul listeners that we've got a special discount for you for any of the things that we offer at premium of 50% off for the entirety of 2026 because we are committed to let's fix it and 26 it.